In the last lesson, we covered the fit functions and callback arguments, and we dived into the model checkpoint callback functions. And for these lessons, we will continue with the fit functions and move on to the next callback argument, that is TensorBoard. Let's go ahead and get started. TensorBoard is a visualization tool provided with TensorFlow. And these callbacks functions logs the events for TensorBoard, logs the events during your training, including the metric summary part, the training graphical visualizations, the histograms, and also the sampled profiling. Let's take a look on that. This is the example that we are going to use. Again, just we have the 3 inputs, 2 neurons in the first layer, and then one neurons in the output layer. Again, we just set this up first. We import the sequential model dense layer and also NumPy, and then we provide the input and output arguments. We use the sequential models. We use the X functions to set them up. Again, we are going to use the compile functions. We're going to use the atom optimizers, the MSE loss functions, and the MAE as the metrics. Let's run this file first. Now we can define the callbacks arguments, that is the TensorBoard argument. Commonly used argument includes the log dir, that is the log directory, that is the path of the directory where to save the log file by this TensorBoard function. And then that is the histogram frequency, and that is the frequency in every epoch at which to compute the activations and also the weight histogram for the layers, for each of the layers of the models. A very good practice is to create a folder names with the current states and times. And therefore, we want to import the datetime. And of course, we want to import the TensorBoard from the callback functions. Just like what I mentioned before, there's 2 arguments. The first argument, that is the log directory. And here I just provide the log feed as the directory, and then pass the time with a certain format. And this format is the year, month, days, hour, minutes, and second. And then we can assign this to the TensorBoard function. And the first is the log directory, and then for the second argument, that is the histogram frequency. And in this case, I set it to 1, and that means I would like to have it for every single epoch. If you set it to 2, then that means it will be every 2 epoch. It will just run these TensorBoard or callback functions. And then we assign it to the TensorBoard callback. And of course, just like what we've done before, we provide everything into a fit function and the input-output arguments. And then now to better illustrate this exercise, I use 200 epoch. And then for the validations, I set it to 80% for training, 20% for the validations. And finally, the final argument set is the callback. I just put it into a, remember, I will need to put it into a list. That is the TensorBoard callback. Now let's run it and wait for a few seconds. Good, we are all set. To load the TensorBoard notebooks, we need to use 2 magic functions. Now we can load the TensorBoard notebook extensions first. Now let's run on the cells. The TensorBoard extensions is loaded. And then once we load these TensorBoard extensions, we can then start the TensorBoard within the notebooks using this magic function. Now if I run the cell, it will launch the TensorBoard. And once your you launch the TensorBoard, there are many things that you can go through, because these TensorBoards provides the visualizations and tools needed for the entire deep learning training, so that it can help you to keep tracking, visualizing the metrics, such as the loss and also the accuracy or the MAE here. And also it can you can just visualize the graph, and that is the setup of your models, including the layers, and also including the deep learning models that you are having. And of course, you can also take a look on the histogram, and that is the histogram of your weight, your bias, or any other tensor as they change over each epoch. But based on my own experience, I will mainly use these scalar functions to understand how the laws change over time during the training, because it provides you the laws on the training and also validations. And in that case, it's much more easier for you to keep track on your the performance of your models. Just like what I mentioned, the dashboards such as scalar, graph, and also histogram can now be viewed. Alternatively, you can also start using the TensorBoard before training to monitor its in the progress. However, this will slow down your training. And in that case, we just need to provide these magic words before we set up the callback and before we fit it into the call functions. Because it will slow down the training, I seldom use it. And just in case, if you are interested to know how it works, please feel free to play around with this notebook later on. And that's it for these lessons. And in the next lesson, we will go through the last callback argument, that is early stopping. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.